Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you, Dr. Paul?
Doing well.
Good.
Doing well.
Good.
So far, doing well almost always.
Yes, exactly.
Of course, I have to keep my fingers crossed, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, but sometimes the country's not doing so well.
Yeah.
And we're interested in not worrying so much about the politics of Washington, D.C., but improving the climate for liberty in the country we happen to live in. Now, there's a challenge.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about it again because we have a conviction that that in the past couple years, our liberties have been severely challenged, and it had a lot to do, and continues to have a lot to do with the people who want to use, this very, very dangerous pandemic with COVID, which is questionable and is being questioned all the time. And there's a lot of scaremongering and tactics of this sort, and it's being managed by the bureaucrats and the politicians and drug companies. But the truth keeps leaking out. And last month or two, they devised this term, the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
Everything was put on the hands of the responsibility of the unvaccinated, saying that, well, they're not vaccinated, so they're spreading the disease, which is weird that they got that far with it, and why no liberal media would ever say, hey, isn't that inconsistent? You're promoting vaccines, and now you're terrified of them.
Yeah.
And so anybody who's unvaccinated, you say, well, we have to have it. We have to be safe. The people complaining must surely have had their vaccination.
Yeah,
and
I
if
think
they were
so.
told to get 6 of them, I'm sure they'll get 6 of them.
Well,
But they just go on and on like that. But now we have a neat article from the Lancet, which came out a couple weeks ago, and the article really gets after these people who, stirred up all the trouble of fear-mongering. And the way I see this, it's maybe overly simplified, but I see this as the people who do the fear-mongering, and they have pushed all this, I think so many of them, inadvertently or on purpose, are allies of the cultural Marxists.
Yeah.
Stirring up trouble. We want major political changes. We want to enlarge the government, and the people have to support it. So we have to scare them.
Yeah.
Because they're well aware, the organizers of such movements are very much aware that most political movements occur and are pushed along mainly by scaring the living daylights out of people,
Yep.
fear-mongering.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they've been doing. But now, of course, I think we questioned this from very early on about the unvaccinated. But now we have substantial support coming, and from Lancet, with an individual writing from an academic viewpoint, and I think this is good that this article is out there.
Yeah, it is. And the Lancet had a scandal back in June of 2020 where they published this paper purporting to be a massive study proving that hydroxychloroquine is dangerous and dangerous to people. Because remember when that came out, you can't use it. Well, that whole thing was bogus. They had to retract it. It was a huge scandal for the Lancet, which prides itself on being a pretty solid medical journal. And this might be them, trying to make up for some of what they did. But what it is, it's taking on this idea, as you say, that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and it's repeated over and over like a bumper sticker. It's meant to be propaganda. As you say, it's meant to pit people against people. You're supposed to hate the unvaccinated because if you can't go to the movies, if you can't go to the store, if you can't go to a restaurant, it's their fault. It's all their fault. And that's what it's done. That's how it's divided society. Well, guess what? The data is a little bit different. Let's put up this first quote, this first clip, because here's a prime mover of this false narrative, Walensky. CDC director warns of pandemic of the unvaccinated. Not to be outdone is our own president, who said just in September, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and it's caused by the fact that despite America having an unprecedented and successful vaccination program, despite the fact that for almost 5 months, free vaccines have been available in 80,000 different locations, we still have nearly 80 million Americans who have failed to get the shot. So what it means is you're the problem. You're responsible because you didn't get it. Let's put up the next clip because I'll just introduce. This is a study done by Günther Kampt. He is a German researcher and expert who published this in the Lancet. If we can put up that next clip. This is fancy language, Dr. Paul, but it gets to the point. The epidemiological relevance of the COVID-19 vaccinated population is increasing. What that means is these are not rare breakthrough cases. And here's a quote. Let's look at this next one. Here's a couple of his backup information. Next clip, please. Next clip, please. He's talking about, in the UK, it was described that secondary attack rates among household contacts exposed to fully vaccinated index cases was similar to households contacts exposed to unvaccinated. 25 for vaccinated, 23 for unvaccinated. 12 of 31 infections in fully vaccinated household contacts arose from fully vaccinated, epidemiologically linked. In Germany, the rate of symptomatic COVID-19 cases among the fully vaccinated is reported weekly since July 21st, 2021. It was at 16.9%, Dr. Paul, at that time among patients 60 years and older. But that proportion is increasing week by week and is by 27 October 2021, 58.9%. So the rare breakthrough cases account in Germany in this study for the majority of symptomatic COVID-19 infections.
I think a lot of this is promoted by people that either think the people they're preaching this to are either idiots or they themselves are the idiots.
Or evil.
But, evil, that's right. But anyway, Walensky in October admitted that the vaccine does not prevent the transmission.
Yeah.
At the same time, all the blame goes on the unvaccinated, and it turns out statistically it isn't true.
Yeah.
You'd think that would be case closed.
Yeah. No more mandates.
Let's have a trial.
Yeah, really.
Let's have a
real
trial. See, that's right. I imagine if you found some people who just know about this in detail, but have a little bit of common sense, present the evidence, I think the trial will show you that the common sense would win and say, this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And yet they go on, it doesn't even faze them. That's what's I think is unbelievable. You'd think they'd try to avoid it or push it aside or say, well, things have changed or something, but they just march on, repeating these nonsense about why it's always the fault of the unvaccinated. No matter where are they getting these statistics?
Yeah.
From the CDC,
Yeah, from the CDC, yeah.
They get the statistics there to show, that it isn't the unvaccinated, and now it's just beginning about the not only the failure of the vaccinations to do much good, the danger of what's happening to the people who have taken these shots, and especially the additional shots, so the booster shots. So it is there. It's still complex. It is not. It's complex politically because the people in charge and the major news media are still spouting this on. But I think it's changing, and the courts have been helpful to us, and all of a sudden we're going to see an explosion of common sense and desire to get them off our backs. I think that's has begun, and that's help it along a little bit.
And I think when the smoke clears, it's going to be more obvious to more people that this is a massive scandal. And the massive scandal is that from the president to virtually all public health officials with a microphone have been turned into PR agents for big pharma that's in bed with government to the tune of billions of dollars with a lot of lives wrecked. Let's go back to that Lancet article because I want to show a chart, and this is really fascinating. If we can put up that next clip and we'll finish it out. The top line, the dark line, is the vaccination rate of those over 60 years old, and it's very, very high. It's in the high 80s. But the gray line is the proportion of fully vaccinated people among symptomatic COVID-19 cases of those over 60, and you can see how it is climbing from July to October, and this is the German case. You can see the massive increase in that. And here now, Günther Kampf wrote a letter based on this, and it's worth having if we can do that next clip. This is his conclusion now that he's seen that you can't talk about this being a pandemic of the unvaccinated because the vaccinated are making up in many studies the majority. This next clip, please, if we can put it up. Here's his conclusion, and it's very good, and we should keep this in mind. Historically, both the U.S. and Germany have engendered negative experiences by stigmatizing parts of the population for their skin color or religion. I call on high-level officials and scientists to stop the inappropriate stigmatization of unvaccinated people, who include our patients, colleagues, and our fellow citizens, and to put extra effort into bringing society together. Well stated, Dr.
It sure has. You know, one person that has helped a lot in exposing what's going on is Robert Kennedy.
Yeah, he sure has.
This is really great that he's doing this because he has, you know, the public relations credentials, the name obviously gives him credibility. And he actually has always taken on corporatism. And you know, the pharmaceuticals, he's been doing this for years.
Yeah.
And so he continues to do this. So he can be a very excellent person, and he is doing it, trying to sort of embarrass progressives a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like progressives all of a sudden getting out of the ACLU and also all of a sudden supporting the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Well, they're no longer progressives. Libertarians have trouble recruiting. We don't want to recruit from them if they don't even believe in civil liberties and non-intervention foreign policy. But Robert Kennedy is a real asset, and of course we've had him on our programs and conferences. So he's well respected. You know, I think there was an effort, or at least there probably still a wish he'd be quiet. I don't think they're going to he's not going to. His book's getting out.
Yeah, his book on Fauci is a massive bestseller, and that tells you, I think, what the people are thinking sub rosa.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, let's put up the next clip because that's our next little thing that we're going to talk about, and it's a good news story, I think, because it shows the market works. Some hospitals drop COVID-19 vaccine mandates to ease labor shortage. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is because superficially, you know, the hospitals were losing their nurses, and I think it would have been easy, and I think I thought this would be the case, and was the case, is that people were leaving just because, you know, they didn't want to take the shot and they'd walk away from it. But we find out that the marketplace even works under these kind of conditions, or especially under these conditions, because we still live in a free enough society statewide. People might move away from California.
Yeah.
They might move to Florida, you know, this sort of thing. So there is a bit of the market moving around. And here it is, we find out that the teachers didn't want to quit, but I'm very impressed. There's so many medical workers, a large percentage of them, they're the ones who have had to take care of the sick patients with COVID, and they're still claiming the hospitals are, you know, filled and the statistics are distorted if you're just going to listen to some nurses talking, and they're the ones who are taking care of them. So that to me is pretty good, because nurses will leave and they'll go to another hospital, and the market has adjusted where they might even travel where nurses are needed. They actually can keep their job as a nurse, and maybe just maintain some of their dignity too, because they stood up for something they believed in. And do you think they'd have done this if they were dealing with a disease that, my goodness, I guess I just been lucky, I'm getting as far away as possible? They would you know, protect themselves. They would stay clear. They would quarantine themselves. They would not go to the hospital. And now they're going, these nurses go and they circulate and take care of mostly COVID patients. And of course they've never had the vaccine. And I think the market sometimes is a lot smarter than the politicians, for sure.
And the other thing is, do you really think these hospitals would have thrown these mandates in if it wasn't for the government, you know, punching them and pushing them to do this? But it's really interesting, and this is the article we saw on Zero Hedge, the main article, but they're talking about a massive exodus of healthcare workers away from hospitals that are demanding that you take the shot, and to hospitals that are giving some freedom. They quote, employment attorney Wayne Simmons, he's the head of Mercer's U.S. regulatory practice, quote, "If you get certain healthcare facilities that don't require it, those could be a magnet for those people who don't want the vaccine. They're probably having an easier time attracting labor." You think so?
Yeah.
But here's the thing that struck me, though, Dr. Paul, in this article, and this is a quote: "Most recently, thousands of nurses have left the industry or lost their jobs rather than get vaccinated. As of September 30th, 30% of workers at more than 2,000 hospitals across the country surveyed by the Centers for Disease Control were unvaccinated." 30%. Now, this is a strange thing if you think about it, because these healthcare workers have been in the trenches of COVID for 2 years, fighting in the trenches. Why is it that it's among the most unvaccinated? You'd think that they would be running, running for the vaccine. Why are so many of them so adamant about not taking it?
And unfortunately, we don't see too many of the nurses on regular television and interviewed and ask that very same question that you're asking.
Why so many?
But you know, the big hospitals have changed. As soon as they see that the courts may be moving in their directions, they immediately would like to get out of the regulation. I think that there will be an explosion of a readjustment here. You know, if they just lighten up a little bit more, maybe the hospitals will open up, because some of the hospitals that have these numerous beds set aside for COVID patients, they're 90% unfilled. You know, so somebody someday they should just get up and say, "Folks, guess what? Don't sweat it anymore. The pandemic is over. It really didn't ever exist. Just go back to work." All mandates by the federal government are illegal, unconstitutional, and stupid. They have been canceled. And then just go back to work. And you know, technically, they should have never been started. If you were following the strict dictates of the Constitution, this wouldn't have been necessary. And it still would have allowed our recommendations on what you do when you get sick, because people can get very sick from this, and it would be handled differently. Just to think of how many people that could have taken ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine early on. We personally know people that suffered. From
that's
not
true.
that.
That's true. And you know, as the Great Barrington Declaration said way back then, focus those resources on providing assistance to those who are most vulnerable, rather than this big group like kids who, thank God, don't get it. If they'd only done that. But you know, Dr. Paul, I'm afraid I have bad news for you. You're going to have to cancel your vacation to Hong Kong, because what was once thought of as a real bastion of freedom in Asia, it doesn't sound that great. They flipped out over there. Now they're saying if you return from the U.S. to Hong Kong, you have to spend a week in a concentration camp and then 2 weeks in a hotel at your own expense before you can enjoy some delicious noodles in Hong Kong.
So it looks like they're leaning toward communism, and that communism is infiltrated, and that battle isn't over yet. And as far as I'm concerned, it's an intellectual battle, and when the people realize that if they want to live decently, they ought to offer, local control and personal liberty rather than having these dictates and expanding the monolith. So what do? Our history shows that we were aware of how a free market works, and yet what are we doing? Are we expanding? The Republicans talk big about it, but when you just look at it, just annoys me to no end when you just look at the budget. That under the recent Republican presidency, the national debt went up $5.5 trillion, and they're out there being the conservatives. So this is it. The Hong Kong is being infiltrated, but the battle's been going on for a long time. All I can look for and struggle to look for that at least it isn't as bad today as it was, but it could. But not likely. When I was in high school, when my teacher was drafted back, he had been in World War II, drafted back, sent to Korea, and got killed over there. And what for? You know, this sort of thing. All that what for stuff is never asked. And someday maybe there'll be enough people. There's a lot of people in Hong Kong that had a breath of freedom.
Oh yeah.
And they'd like to see that come back, but that is no easy struggle to deal with.
Well, here's the punchline of the whole thing, right? So they announced these new measures. You got to go to a concentration camp. Really, it is. If you look at the pictures, it looks horrible. There's no windows. It's just a nasty place. And then you got to do a hotel at your own expense. Here's the punchline, Dr. Paul, and this is from the Zero Hedge. The new measures, which were announced on Friday, come after the city's health authorities elevated the country to the highest COVID-19 risk level. And here's why. It was prompted by one confirmed case of the Omicron variant in a traveler from the U.S. who was an asymptomatic 37-year-old man who had received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up.
Yeah, well, this is fake.
I thought it was
This is
too.
fake news.
Yeah.
No, it couldn't happen.
I mean, he wouldn't have known if he hadn't been tested that he had it. He had 2 doses and still.
And just see, this is probably the smallest incident that justified more government, but this it's a shame that we can't make better use of that. It's a shame that people go along with it, and it just marches on, a little excuse, and people become terrified. And every time we say that, we have to qualify and say, but people are waking up, and maybe this. Yeah, this is the whole thing. This is a terrible thing of what they're doing, and it doesn't make any sense at all. But the good part is people are going to read this, and a lot of people who've been wondering about it will maybe have a reaction like, wait a minute, what are they doing?
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe this could be true.
Yeah.
Then they can check into it, find, my golly, that's what they did.
Yeah.
You know, so blame it on the anti-vaxxers. It's all their fault.
That's all, yeah, exactly, pandemic. But you know, the thing that's really sad, even though we laugh at how crazy this sounds, there are a lot of poor people who are now stuck there. They're going to be in these camps through Christmas. They went over to visit Granny. Maybe it's the last time they're going to see their grandparents, and they're stuck here. We have some friends that are stuck in South Africa with the same situation. They cannot leave. So as bad as it is here, the U.S., shockingly enough, is becoming an island of sanity in an insane world, except for Sweden, which is also sanity, much more than ours.
Well, there should be millions of people marching in the streets demonstrating that this is not the way to go, and do that in a nonviolent manner. And the numbers have already started to have an effect, because it isn't, maybe they have one person and they justify and get away with a lot. I tell you what, we need more people, and a large number of people out there saying enough is enough, this changes, we're not going to put up with it. It's a little easier in a system where there's still a little bit of voting going on. As corrupt as that has become, there still is a modification of what governments are, because we have a governor like DeSantis in Florida. So, and I think that is good, because he's standing his ground. So this is very good. So let's just hope that the momentum continues, because if we can't win this silliness that they do, and when you look at the failure of the system, and we have a strong belief that our system of social order means that people should be free, and they solve their own problems, they keep the fruits of their labor. Based on moral and constitutional principles, how can we lose that argument? So all we can do is, we might not be able to answer that. All we can do is keep promoting that system of government, which makes a lot more sense to us. Yeah,
we have a couple more quickies to bring up here. I think
they're now. Okay. This is on the kids.
Yeah.
This is probably not brand new, but just reiterates that. They've now killed close to twice as many kids from the vaccine as have died from COVID. But it comes from, once again, from COVID data, from CDC data.
Yeah, it's a CDC.
That to me is the amazing thing. They were recording that, and I've heard of it, that people got into trouble by citing the CDC. And we have to cancel you. You can't cite that information. This is derogatory.
And again, it's going back to the VAERS database. And that's where the reporting comes from. And they'll say, well, these are not confirmed. That's fine. Well, why don't we spend a little bit of resources to confirm them? Because there's a lot at stake. We know that children aren't dying of this, thankfully, with very few exceptions. But we know that there seem to be some risks, at least in the adverse reaction database. There seem to be some problems with it. So let's devote some resources and find out. If it's nothing, that's great news. if it's something, we need to make some adjustments here.
It wouldn't serve their interest.
That's right. You can't
It
sell.
wouldn't serve their interest. Truth is not exactly what they're looking for. You know.
So let's put up this last clip here as Dr. Paul starts us out with this next topic. Survey finds 75% of employers won't have the vaccine ban if the U.S. mandate is struck down.
Yeah, this is the plan. It's out there, a little urging. Maybe some will start a little sooner because they're so close to this, you know, because the courts have been ruling favorably. So, no, this is a sign that, that there's still enough people here to continue the resistance. And fortunately, even though the violence is out there to some degree, but I'll tell you what, I don't think that, you know, they're blaming the anti-vaxxers for everything. But there's no way they should get away with blaming the anti-vaxxers for the violence in the cities of the past summer, where they shoot and kill and murder and tear up the city, and then have no repercussion from it. You get arrested for 10 minutes and then you're released again, even if you killed somebody. And they've devised a system where you don't even be charged. Oh, you can steal $1,000, or is it $1,000?
I think it's only $900.
Oh, $900.
Don't exaggerate.
And that is not a crime.
Yeah,
so stealing a little bit, but what happens if it's $1,005 or
That's
something?
it.
Oh, it's only worth $995.
That's right.
So anyway, but this is good. Survey finds 75% won't have the vaccine if mandated. So they're sitting there waiting, feel a little bit safer and secure if the announcement comes, and it may come soon. It's going to be hard to reverse these last couple rulings and say, okay, we're going back on that and everybody back. But there's attempts to do that. I mean, New York City does it. They don't follow any.
California just put a mask mandate on again too, because that worked so well last time.
I'm not moving.
No, I don't want to even go there.
So.
But here's the thing. I think what this tells us. This is a survey from the Society of Human Resource Management. It tells you that the vast majority of businesses do not want to mandate vaccines for their employees. They don't want to get involved in this, but they're afraid of government, so that's why they're going along. And that says a lot about government itself, and it says a lot about the tactics of the Biden administration trying to strong arm and intimidate people. But this is an interesting quote. She's Emily Dickens is the chief of staff for the Society of Human Resources Management who paid for the survey, and she was saying that the administration should have done a lot more to explain to employers what this meant, because here's what she said. Unfortunately, the vaccine and testing mandate was rolled out without input from employers, causing concern and confusion that we see in our research. And I would say, Dr. Paul, I bet that's by design. They want that confusion. They want people to feel pushed around. They don't want to have a clear policy on it.
And that serves their interests.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that we have to do, is realize their interests are almost opposite of the people who would like to live in a free society, and their goals are power and pharmaceutical profits. Who knows what. But still, we don't have a whole lot of options. We have to resist. We have to identify. We have to try to educate people, because the alternative is not feasible. People will say, and there's still a lot on our side of this argument that say, no, time for arms. You got to take up the arms. You know, and I haven't gotten quite to that point.
No way. That's just what the bad guys want. Right?
Yeah, boy,
they want
that's
another
for sure.
January 6th.
They're prepared for this.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to close with a chart, which I haven't done in a while, because, you know, Germany's gone full 1933. I mean, they are out there. I saw a video the other day, Dr. Paul, of policemen with yardsticks measuring everyone to make sure they're 6 feet apart. Totally insane. They've gone off the rails. They're going to hold you down and force you to take a shot in your arm, even though, as we talk ourselves blue in the face, telling people that the shots don't prevent it. Even the experts say it. They're still going to hold them down because they just can't get rid of these terrible instincts. Well, let's have a look at this next chart. And this is Ian, who does such great work. Deaths in Germany are currently 1,560% higher than in Sweden, despite Germany's mask mandate and overwhelming compliance. In fact, The Atlantic, which you know is COVID crazy, The Atlantic said everyone they saw in Germany was wearing an N95 mask, while hardly anyone in Sweden wears masks at all. So why aren't they working? And here's the chart that shows Germany, new daily deaths is massively increasing. In Sweden, it's almost going below zero. That's how low it is. So all you have to do is look at a couple of charts to back up what we say.
We'll keep doing it. And, hopefully our viewers that we have, and they're so dedicated and loyal and friendly toward us, I just ask you to try to spread the message. You know, if any of this is it touches you and you think it's worthwhile, I know you can reach other people. Some people say, oh no, it's overwhelming. You guys have a program and you can reach several thousand people easily. But it doesn't take that. It has to start with something. And almost everybody has a few friends and has an email list. And just referring them to our program or copying things down and taking some of these articles. Because I think that, especially to those that are leading this way or who are confused, and politely ask them if they would read something. Because I know that system doesn't work when it's aggressively placed on there. Look, with an attitude, you know, you guys are stupid. Read this because this is the real truth. Believe me, that doesn't work. The one thing that I was taught a long time ago is when you give out information, you try to persuade people. It's about 100 times better if that individual actually asks you for some information because of their curiosity. That meant they opened the door a little bit, and I always tried to look for those cracks in the door. And when the crack was there, I would go there gently in and try to approach them and get some converts. And who knows, I may have had one or two or three or four. The one thing, if you do follow this trick and this effort, you'll never know how much good you do. But believe me, it'll be a lot more than if you do it aggressively or you don't do it at all. So once again, I want to thank all our viewers for tuning in today, and please come back soon to the Liberty Report.